These are my picks for the most exciting cards to build around from the new set, Brothers War. Let's get into it. Starting off, we got the Meld Commanders. Titania, Voice of Gia, Mishra, Claimed by Gix, and Urza, Lord Protector. Titania reads, whenever one or more land cards are put into your graveyard from anywhere, you gain 2 life, and at the beginning of your upkeep, if there are 4 or more lands in your graveyard, and you own and control Titania, Voice of Gia, and a land named Argoth, Sanctum of Nature, exile them, and then you'll meld them into Titania, Gia Incarnate. Gia Incarnate is a vigilant, trample, reach, haste, whose power and toughness are equal to the number of lands you control, and when it enters the battlefield, you can return all land cards from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. And if you pay 4, you can put 4 +1/+1 counters on target land you control, and it becomes a 0/0 elemental creature with haste, and it's still a land. Pretty good. Argoth, Sanctum of Nature is just a land that comes into play tapped unless you control a commander or a legendary creature. Makes bears, mills you for 3. At the end of the day, it's just a land nobody really cares about. We need it because it flips with Titania. That's really all there is to it. Now with Titania, you can build around her as she is, or you can put her in other Titania decks, or decks that care about lands entering the graveyard like Slogurg, or Hazazon, or the other Titania. But really the most exciting thing is just getting these commanders to flip into a big scary monster. Up next there's Mishra, Claimed by Gix, and the Phyrexian Dragon Engine. With Mishra, whenever you attack, each opponent loses X life and you're gonna gain X life. X is the number of attacking creatures you control. And with the Phyrexian Dragon Engine, whenever it enters the battlefield from your graveyard, you can discard your hand and then draw 3 cards. After you jump through some hoops, do some backflips and a couple of cartwheels, you'll get these cards to meld, and then you'll get Mishra, Lost to Phyrexia. Whenever Mishra, Lost to Phyrexia attacks or enters the battlefield, you can choose 3 of its modes, which will either make opponents discard 2 cards, deal some damage to any target, destroy an artifact or a planeswalker, creatures you control gain menace or trample, creatures you don't control get -1/-1 until the end of the turn, or create 2 tapped Power Stone tokens. And the cherry on top, it happens to be a 9/9. Last up out of the Meld Commanders, we got Urza, Lord Protector. Now, let's be honest, if you want any chance in hell at getting Urza to flip, you're gonna have to load this deck full of counterspells, board wipes, planeswalkers, and stacks pieces. Look, I don't like it any more than you do, but we have to play to our color's strengths. White has some of the best board wipes in the game, and blue has some of the best ways to protect our board state using cards like Dovin's Veto, Counterspell, Forces, Packs, Arcane Denials, that sort of stuff. And not to mention the fact that blue has some of the most powerful tutors in the game, and it's real easy for blue to either tutor up artifacts or other spells that'll let us search for artifacts. And blue has some of the best card draw spells in the game. And once we get our Planeswalker online, we can use his 0 ability to create 2 colorless soldier artifact tokens or exile target non-land permanent. Once Magical Christmas Land rolls around, we can -10, and artifacts and planeswalkers you control will gain indestructible until end of turn, and we can destroy all non-land permanents. And once we get there, we'll be in such an overwhelmingly advantageous position that we can win in literally whatever way we choose. We can either just ultimate all our planeswalkers, draw our opponents all out to death, whatever. Up next on the list, we got One with the Multiverse. This card reads, you may look at the top card of your library at any time, you may play lands and cast spells from the top of your library, and once during each of your turns, you may cast a spell from your hand or the top of your library without paying its mana cost. This card is basically just a fixed, more fair version of Omniscience, and it's a little cheaper to cast too. Now, this card goes good in something like Joyra because she's cheating cards into the battlefield using suspend counters, and there's a few ways to manipulate suspend counters to get it on the battlefield even quicker. Or you could put it into a deck like Alando the Seer, which basically does more or less what Joyra does, but now you're in Simic colors instead of Izzet colors. Or you can just put it into a mono blue deck like Thrax the Sudden Storm, which just lets you cast cards with converted mana cost 5 or greater for 1 less, then stick a bunch of cards in it that let you reduce the casting cost of cards by 1 more generic, and just keep loading up on those effects till essentially it becomes like a 3 or 4 drop card. Any big mana, cast giant spells over the top deck is going to want to copy this card. Really excited to play with it. Moving right along, we got Tawnos the Toy Maker. Tawnos reads, whenever you cast a beast or bird creature spell, you may copy it, except the copy is an artifact in addition to its other types. I can hear you all now. Wow, Simic tokens, that's never been done before. Let me guess, you're gonna stick things like Birds of Paradise, Stormcrow, and Gilded Goose in and get copies of them. Well, yes, we're gonna do that, but there's other synergies I think people are missing out on. I think one of those things people are missing out on is things with Mutate. Tawnos is going to go great with Mutate abilities, because Mutate abilities are still creatures even when you cast them for their Mutate cost on the stack. Now, let's say you have Tawnos on the battlefield and a Stormcrow, and you cast Gem Razor targeting Stormcrow. Tawnos triggers and copies the spell, the copy resolves and merges onto Stormcrow, the Mutate triggers once, and then the original will resolve and merge onto that creature, and the Mutate will trigger twice. And there's a pretty decent amount of beasts and birds that'll let you mutate. And then you throw in some more tribal synergies with birds and beasts, give some stuff flying, give some stuff trample, and then I think you got yourself a pretty good commander to build around. Next up, we got Ashnod the Uncaring. Ashnod reads, whenever you activate an ability of an artifact or creature that isn't a mana ability, if one or more permanents were sacrificed to activate it, you may copy the ability and choose new targets for the copy. So Ashnod is basically an aristocrat's commander for creatures and artifacts that sack to activate an ability. This is huge. And with cards like Doomed Necromancer and Ashnod out on the battlefield, you're going to be able to double up on the sack trigger that lets you return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. And with cards like Clan Crafter, your commander is going to have the ability to pay 2 and sacrifice an artifact to put a +1/+1 counter on it and draw a card. And with Ashnod's ability, this is going to trigger this ability twice, so you'll be able to put 2 +1/+1 counters on it and draw 2 cards. And once you're finally done having friends, you can use cards like Time Sieve. You can sacrifice 5 artifacts and take an extra turn after this one. And with Ashnod, you're just going to be taking 2 turns, and I'm almost positive somehow, some kind of way, this is going to go infinite with a ham sandwich. I'm not smart enough to figure it out, but if you are, post it in the comments below so we can all be as smart as you. Last on the list, we got the Archimandrite. The Archimandrite reads, at the beginning of your upkeep, you gain X life, where X is the number of cards in your hand minus 4. Then, whenever you gain life, each advisor, artificer, and monk you control gains vigilance and gets +X/+0 until the end of turn, where X is the amount of life you gained. Then you can tap 3 untapped advisors, artificers, and or monks you control to draw a card. Now, the only part of this card we even care about is this part right here. So let me set up a little scenario for you. Let's say you got your commander out, you got Jeskai Sage, Jeskai Student, and an Abbot of Carol Keep all out on the battlefield, and you cast something like Revitalize. Your monks are going to get their prowess trigger, so they're going to get +1/+1. Then your commander's ability is going to trigger and give them +3/+0. Then you're going to draw the card, and then they're going to get Vigilance. This is going to make it real easy for you to constantly be swinging into your opponents without fear of crackback. And then whenever you gain life randomly, it's going to pump your creatures. And then because you're in white, you're going to have a ton of ways to gain life incidentally and at instant speed with things like Revitalize, Reviving Dose, and then you'll be able to use cards like Well of Lost Dreams to get even more card draw to keep your hand full so you can trigger the ability and gain the life and do the thing. And because you're in Jeskai, you're going to be able to use things like Flying Crane technique to give all your creatures flying and double strike. And let's not forget, you're in blue, so you're going to be able to counter, search, draw, all that good stuff. All in all, I think this is a great commander. It's got a great ability, and it might just be the best life gain themed commander in the game, period. All that being said, I'm super excited to start building some of these cards into commanders or building decks around these cards. So that's it, everybody. Let me know what cards you're super excited about in the comments below. Drop me a like, hit the subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.